Hey guys, it's Mark from Erickson Machine and Performance. In this video I'm going to go through rebuilding Keihin CDK2 carburetor. I'm going to go through all the different tools needed to rebuild the carb and walk you through all the little steps, what's needed. I personally use an ultrasonic cleaner. There's other ways of doing it with just carb clean. So I'm going to walk you through this. Before we get started, the normal disclaimer: if you guys like the videos, please subscribe to the channel. Comment, tell us what you want to see, tell us what videos you like, tell us anything you want us to do on the channel. We also got our stickers in. If you guys like to help us out, hit us up on Facebook. We can hook you up with some stickers. All the money from the stickers ends up going to the channel. Investing in microphones, cameras, lighting, so on and so forth. As I said before, this stuff's new to me. I know how to rebuild stuff, but filming is very new. So let's get started. Like most carbs, the Keihin CDK2 carbs, it's hard to see, but there's a little dot on all the Phillips head screws. Those dots actually mean it's JIC, not actually Phillips head, which is the reason most people strip these screws out all the time. So if you're going to be rebuilding these, I recommend getting a set of JIC screwdrivers. They look like Phillips head, but the angle's actually different. This set, I want to say, was 30 bucks, something like that. Came with 3. Vessel is the manufacturer. They also make changeable end one, which is also great. I think this was even cheaper. It was like 20 bucks. Really, really high quality stuff. You won't be disappointed if you get it. Give it a try. So one, you're going to need these. If the screws are really stuck or there's been a lot of salt water, you're going to need an impact screwdriver. And then either an ultrasonic cleaner or carb clean, whichever one you prefer. So let's get started and see how this carb opens up. So whenever you're doing it, make sure you put a good amount of pressure on the screws to open them up. Always push down tight to make sure your screwdriver is biting in. Luckily this one happened to come off. You'll see if you invest in the proper JIS screwdrivers, you'll be amazed how easy this stuff ends up coming apart when you have the right tools. That was interesting. There's actually a loose screw in this carburetor. Actually looks stripped. No, maybe it was just backed out. Well, let's keep digging. So, well, obviously, if you look in here, you can see somebody's been in here before. It's all dinged up. Now, whether that damage is just from the screw being loose and jingling around, it is possible. So we will remove the needle arm, the needle, and the spring. That screw, if it was in, you'd have to remove it, which removes this whole section of the carburetor. I just take my nail to pull the rubber up. Take the lower plate off. Now what I always do on any carburetor that I'm rebuilding, you take the little plastic caps off, they just pop off. But what you want to do, you want to know what the carb was set at, and you want to write it down. So I'll screw it in. So we'll go half, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4. So the low speed was 4. So I will just write it. Low 4 turns. Half, 1, 1.5, 2, 2 1/4. So the high is 2 1/4. So anytime you're taking apart a carburetor, you want to check that beforehand, or you're going to have no idea where your setting was while the ski was running. And some skis can run funny, so having the baseline that you were running before can really save some headaches later. And it's something a lot of people miss. They just back them out and then start calling around or looking on the internet to see, hey, what was this supposed to be set at? When it's an avoidable thing, as long as you take the step beforehand. So that is the front of the carb. Everything apart. Now we'll go to the fuel pump section. Now, with many carbs, if you're going to end up not putting them in an ultrasonic cleaner, I recommend removing the jets. On Mikunis, you should always remove the jets. These, because that whole section of the carb comes out and it's going in the ultrasonic cleaner, I can check that the jets are clean after it comes out, so there's no real reason to remove them. Now we'll remove the fuel pump. Pop up. There we go. And then there's 2 tamper torques that hold the cap on. And that's about it. So, as I was saying before, so now this will get popped off the screen. There we go, little screen's off. So now we will take this whole assembly, we'll take this cover, and then we'll take the fuel pump after I take the tamper torques out. One quick thing before I finish, you'll see there's the tamper torques, which is a torques with a little tit in the middle. So you need a bit that looks like this, which will fit on. The bits aren't expensive, but it is a necessity to take these fuel pumps apart, unfortunately. And that just accesses the pulse diaphragm for the fuel pump. You know, luckily these fuel pumps are really, really strong because they actually use a metal check valve. So they very rarely fail. These diaphragms can fail, but the actual check valves rarely do. Alright, now into the ultrasonic cleaner, and we'll be back in a minute. Alright guys, here we are. We're back. Carbs out of the ultrasonic cleaner. Looks like it's brand new. All the parts are out. So we're going to get started on rebuilding. One thing I missed to show you before There's 2 O-rings on the needle and seat that you have to remove, and then obviously replace when you go put it back together. So let's start off with the main body and we'll work backwards. So here's a plastic piece that was removed that we end up putting back in. Then we need the check valve and the plastic. That goes back in. Goes like so. Come on, drop in. There we go. Let's grab all our hardware. So I also clean all the hardware in the ultrasonic cleaner, just to get any gunk off any of the threads, stuff like that. Some people like to do it, some people don't. It's not really necessary, but I would say it's helpful. All right, now we're going to put the 2 screws in, hold the check valve, we will take the old gasket and compare, make sure we match, because they do give extras. I've said in other videos, on any O-ring stuff, I like to use assembly glue. It's designed for O-rings, and I put a super thin coat of it. And when I say super thin, I mean you barely can see it. It just kind of makes it moist. I find that they don't stick as often. They stay in the groove while you're getting everything prepped better. And they don't degrade as quickly. It's just something I do. You don't have to if you don't want to. So now, that's that section. We will go on, same thing with the O-ring. I'll put a little assembly glue on both O-rings. Slide them both on. Just a dab will do you. So wipe off the excess. Put the screen back on. There we go. Slip that back in. Put the screw back in. Go. Now we will compare the springs to the old spring. So if the spring matches, we'll replace the spring. We will replace the needle. Put the needle in. You'll always tell which way this sits by the tit has to end up cupping the spring. So I'll set the needle in, set the spring on the tit, and then start the screw. Go. Once again, a little of the assembly goo just on the outside. As I said, the thinnest coat, it's really more to make it moist. And you'll see, if you ever have to rejet your carbs, or you take them apart every year or so, to just check that there's nothing going on, there's nothing stuck in them, this step makes life significantly easier years down the road, which is really the only reason I do it. Let's put that on, make sure it's sitting nicely. Throw the screws in. Bigger screwdriver. There we go. Nice and tight. Now we will go to the needles, put the springs on the needles. Then there's a plastic spacer. And then the two O-rings, which once again, a little dab of assembly goo on each one. Slide them on. And then we will thread these all the way in and then back them out. So in general, any carb setting, the way you set them is you go all the way till closed and then back it back open. So, and that's where we're going to use the settings that we had before. So on the high speed we had 2 1/4. So we will go 1, 2 1/4, and on the bottom we had 4. So half, 1, 1 1/2, 2, 2 1/2, 3, 3 1/2, 4. And then we will put the tamper caps on top. And I set them right in the middle, so that way you have a little bit of adjustment if you have to fine tune it when you get to that point. Alright, now let's get to the fuel pump. On these fuel pumps, if they're not really cruddy, I actually don't take these diaphragms out. You can if they're dirty. These looked immaculate at the time. There was no real reason to. If you want to, you can. Just the way I happen to do it with some of these. So same thing with the O-rings that go around them. A little bit of assembly goo. These O-rings only go in one direction, as you'll find out if you go to put them on. To the other side. There we go. So then we'll go gasket, diaphragm, fuel pump, diaphragm, gasket, and then pulse cover. And up. That is not fitting right with that. There we go. Perfect. Big thing with these is you want to make sure everything's sitting right and flat. There's little... Ooh, I almost made a mistake there. Happy I caught that. So what we're going to do, set those down. This body has to get screwed together. With those tamper torques. So that will get tightened down. Which is a good reason to keep a fairly clean workbench with just the screws you need for the job, so that way if all of a sudden you're at the end and you notice, hey, I got 2 extra screws, you know how far back you have to go for your screw up. So start all the screws in. And finish her up. Now the one thing you want to know, this is with basically any carb kit. You know, they make these kits for a few different carburetors. So there could be extra gaskets left over. Most of them give you, you know, several different springs. So you could end up with springs left over. So you want to check when you're putting it together first. 1, when you take it apart, that you have everything you need to put it back together. And 2, that although you're going to have leftovers, make sure it's actually a leftover and not something you missed. So that is fully rebuilt Keihin CDK2 carb. If you guys liked the video, as I said before, please subscribe to the channel. And thanks for watching, guys. You have a good night.